Welcome to the Five Phenomenon Podcast. I am your host, Shane Hazen. With me again this week is Ted Haycraft.
Yes.
Ted Haycraft, who is no man's sidekick. So, Ted, what did you watch this week? Anything interesting?
Yeah, actually, you should be proud of me. I've taken a break from feature films. I did watch the documentary on John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis, but
that's from this year.
Yes, from 2020. But I did. I finished up season 1 of Fleabag.
Nice.
I started Babylon Berlin, Tom Tykwer and a couple other German directors series that David Thompson. I read that David Thompson liked a lot, so I had to check this out, and I really do.
I haven't seen.
And you know my obsession over Leon Trotsky, or the very first episode of season 1. Down with Stalin, up with Trotsky. Trotsky plays a plot element in this thing, so I'm sold.
You say it as a positive thing that you watched TV this week. I only watched one interesting.
Oh, I forgot. You're gonna mention this.
What? I watched one interesting movie this week, which I'll bring up later because it was for this episode, but it's one feature. But the only really thing I watched this week was WandaVision,
which I did too.
Yeah.
Speaking
it's it's a TV show, but it's so TV centric. And
speaking of what we're going to talk about with the 60s,
right?
Yeah,
or the man who is behind the peak TV movement.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, you got this whole the whole play on Dick Van Dyke in the first episode, and then the whole play on Bewitched in the second episode. So I don't know if they're going to go. Every episode's going to tackle a different.
I think it is like they're doing like I don't know what the 70s antecedent is. Not like All in the Family or anything.
And they're spot on many occasions. It's the actual
I have seen a lot of Bewitched. I haven't seen much Dick Van Dyke.
Well, you notice they even did the color switch on Bewitched, which Bewitched was in black and white. It's a couple seasons and it was a color. So you did that, even a nod to that.
You sound more enjoyable by this. I was a little more. I'm feeling like there's something about the streaming wars taking over and everyone getting into streaming, and they've been warned this this is going to be the end of peak TV, just because it's a solid show. I'm not going to deny it, but there's something that's so, to me, getting tiresome about, and it's been hitting me all this year about certain TV shows where I just feel like. There's these ideas that generally maybe have a little more information or a little more meat to them than a feature, and people drag them out into full seasons, and then they get, especially when they try to fill in the middle of the seasons with that episodic structure, you see the structure, you see every scene, you see the A story, B stories, even C stories, what they're going to do, where they're going, and it gets really tedious, and it's just, some of these are hard to get through. WandaVision isn't that, is solid.
No,
it's solid.
You're this is Kevin Feige. I'm more, just as a fanboy, because I'm a child of the 60s.
Always the fanboy, Ted.
And I was there at the tail end of the classic Marvel period of Kirby.
Were you? Were you? Did you read Marvel comics in the 60s, Ted, as a child? I've never heard that before.
So I'm just amazed what Kevin Feige's pulling off. And I'm curious to see if he's going to make, because we were all disappointed that the Daredevil, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones stuff, they were.
I couldn't even finish it.
Well, not only that, but the fact that they were being cagey about it. Was it part of the MCU or was it not part of the MCU? And this one here, they're going full in the deep end of the pool.
The credit I will give Feige that a lot of comic producers or directors have had problems with, that he's a master at. Which, I mean, to be fair, he's shepherding and he's having other people do it, but he actually adapts the stories and adapts them. But he
cherry picks them,
and he picks the best of them. It's clear that he takes the stuff that works
in the comic book.
Yeah, we've mentioned Tom King on the show before, and it seems like Tom King's vision is a big part of where they're going with this. But you also, when we talked about this before, you alluded to a lot of the 70s Scarlet Witch stories and her mental illness.
Yeah, Scarlet Witch, there's a lot of stories where she's having a lot of problems in the mind, and she's got this mutant power that goes out of control. So that probably is playing into that. I'm just going to, from a fanboy aside, I'm really curious. And then it's going to be interesting too because he's going into territory of tight continuity, which is a new thing and because Bond films had some continuity, but it was just so loose that you almost didn't notice it.
Wasn't it just a secret agent that carried the 007 and changed his name to Bond,
No,
but it was a
there
different one?
there,
I'm kidding.
yeah.
I'm kidding, Dad.
And then even Tarzan or some other franchises, there's some nods. Indiana Jones. I mean, but it wasn't tight. It wasn't really keeping everything tightened up.
You got our Star Trek that kept tight. It's continuity.
And it's going to be interesting because but the problem is actors age, contracts change, time marches on. So it's going to be the main thing is, can you maintain this? Because that's a problem in the comic books.
With this
continuity is a huge monster, and if you get really, you get this. That's what fanboys get a bad name because they get tied up in continuity.
Right.
And so it's going to be interesting to see how this if it's going to keep on playing out.
Continuity is the last refuge of a scoundrel. Yeah, I'm with you. Speaking of TV to movies to TV, we're going to talk today TV to movies. So
exactly.
This week we were discussing David Chase's sole feature film, Not Fade Away, which you were saying before we started recording that we probably need to explain why we were doing this episode.
Well, we don't have to. I mean, it's funny because you have this guest. You're basically you're scheduling seems to be interviewing guests or
not necessarily. It's we have the two designations between interviews and appreciations, and this is an appreciation.
So episode. why this appreciation, Shane? That's I guess.
Well, what was really charming about this is we both independently came across this film. It was an underrated. For some reason, this is a film. No one talks about this movie.
Exactly.
Now, I mean, that tends to be why we pick these movies. It's tricky because I also, in theory, if I was being more commercial minded, I'd pick movies that were actually streaming and available to people. And this one was really hard to find. I had to borrow your Blu-ray to rewatch it. I haven't watched it since it came out in the theaters, and I was excited about it because, like, you only watched the first season of Sopranos. You said
I unfortunately on one season, and that's been a while too.
Yeah,
not that I don't want to. It's just time. I got so many things I love to do, and I've always meant to watch it. So please don't throw bricks in.
They're one of the greatest TV shows of all time.
Exactly.
And Ted hasn't watched.
The ground zero of the Renaissance we're in now. Basically.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this because I got the peak TV phenomenon. Since this was the first main one, I got some theories on that. But it's odd how many people are willing to rewatch Sopranos episodes over and over and over, but no one ever brings it. This movie just came and went.
It was a December movie. It dropped around Christmas time.
I think it had Oscar hopes.
And I just walked out of that theater just like, oh my gosh.
Where did you see it? Where did you see it?
Showplace on the opening weekend. Probably, I don't know if it was opening night, but the poster grabbed me. The title grabbed me. David Chase is involved. I had really no clue. The marketing was just nil on the thing.
I was going to say, do you remember the trailer at all? Because I don't.
They don't remember. Could very well be there was never a trailer that played at Showplace.
I was in my temporary period of living in Indianapolis when I saw this, and I've been looking forward to it. It was like we mentioned, it was a December movie, and there's a certain trend that happens at film festivals where if a movie doesn't go big at the film festivals, it just seems like it's abandoned.
It just seemed like nobody knows about this or cares about it. I brought it up. A guy called me today and I said I was going to go do this podcast, and I said I'm really going to talk about this film I love, and he goes, "What is it?" I go, and he went, "Let me write that down." Let me go. I go, "Well, you might have a hard time finding it because like you said. Do
you want to do the plot synopsis?
Yeah, well, it's basically it's what's interesting. It's a coming of age story, sort of, and it takes place from 62 to 68, basically. I
thought it was 63. It's because it starts out right after the Edsel.
For some reason, I saw 62. Oh, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, 63. It's actually right before the Edsel.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. But because the one the person
62. Yeah, well, that's in February, so it technically could see the end of 62. But anyway, it's right around that period where the Beatles hit.
I thought the beginning had JFK's assassination at the very beginning of it. No, not actually, but they talked about
the funeral.
It happened.
I think that it happened, and the funeral was on in that one scene.
That's November 63.
So,
I'm saying this like I lived through it.
Uh,
I'm glad I derailed your plot synopsis.
no, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, whatever. The It's basically that period, right before the Beatles hit, and this kid is he ends up wanting to be in a band. And this kid is what's his name? David, Doug. It's Doug. And he gets in a band, and the band goes through different permutations, and it's basically you're following this kid's rise, if this band's going to do anything or not, and then he ends up all the kind of falls apart, and then he ends up going to L.A. with his girlfriend, maybe to get into Hollywood.
Goes to film school at the end, yeah.
And what's interesting is David Chase was in a band. They were really
from Jersey. He was a drummer, yeah.
Drummer, and he's a drummer, which Doug is a drummer, and he ends up going to Hollywood, and he ends up becoming a writer. So basically, it's funny in one of the featurettes on the Blu-ray. He goes, it's not biographical. Well, right after he says that,
he then goes into a laundry list of all the things.
He almost negates what he says because it's a lot of biographical
You're getting
material.
into why I think most people have been willing to ignore this movie, just because this movie is excessively autobiographical. Like it's not in some specific details of what I've been able to look up at David Chase's life, but I mean, this movie it's like Armored Fellini's Armored or something like that, where he's just or not maybe Roma level, but like he's throwing like it's not just about the incidents in his life, but it's all his artistic influences. Okay, let's start out with this. You and I, it's frequently said that people are either Beatles people or Rolling Stones people, and you and I, although I think you disagree with my level of intensity and devotion, you and I are both Beatles people.
Yeah, I'm definitely Beatles.
This movie is clearly made by a Stones guy.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me say one reason I love this movie. It had nothing to do with David Chase or his biographical. It's the opening shot, the opening sequence, and the ending sequence that just win me.
I don't want to jump too far ahead to the ending sequence, but I forgot that
the bookends of this film. The rest of the film almost doesn't match the wonderfulness of the opening and the ending. It's almost like they're on they're almost on a different level for me.
I don't know if I agree with that.
But
what
the juxtaposition of the music, the footage, the black and white footage of Joey D and the Starlighters.
Okay, I was curious about. They're doing the twist.
Probably, I guess they're doing one of these dance songs, but you're not hearing that. You're hearing a different song.
Well, the end of it is the Sex Pistols cover of Jonathan Richman's
Well, that's at the end.
Yeah. Oh.
But the beginning is Satisfaction.
Oh, right.
And it goes into and you go into the emergency broadcast system test, and that's that just kind of hit me. What she says at the end is what you see at the beginning.
Yeah. No, and I don't. At the where are we jumping?
I know. Let's get back.
The ending is so good, but I'm not with you on the fact that like the filmmaking is lessened or different than because
it's metaphorical. Those almost the beginning and ending where nothing.
Well,
else.
The ending especially, but I think what you're dismissing is like the David Chase kind of. Let's get to the character of David Chase's filmmaking, which I'm coming through. I reread a lot of Sopranos interviews for this going into, but there's a really weird thing with him where, for starters, had you seen any of his stuff he'd done before Sopranos? He did. He worked on Rockford Files. He worked at.
It's just really nondescript TV craftsmanship that he's all over the place. He worked on Night Stalker TV series.
He was a script editor on Night Stalker. Yeah.
And
because what was weird is because I kept thinking of Night Gallery for some reason because he keeps mentioning Rod Serling.
Twilight Zone, but that's Night Gallery's. It's not as considered as critically acclaimed as Twilight Zone.
No. But I'm just saying, like I was conflating the two, thinking that because it's clear that TV is a big deal for him, seeing as he worked for TV for. It's almost like the Michael Mann jump, where someone was doing episodic TV in the 70s and not anything of like, Michael Mann goes from Vegas to Thief,
Well, there's another reason I love this movie is because it name drops so many pop culture references and rock and roll references. I think almost every British invasion band or anything of note is mentioned in this thing. I have a list here we can rattle off here.
Go for it.
Yeah, well, You want to, I mean, this is why I just goes crazy. You got, okay, JFK, Ginsberg, Twilight Zone, Beatles, Rolling Stones, Archie Comics, Vietnam, Bo Diddley, Cuban Heels, Castro, Dylan, Atomic Bomb, Robert Johnson, Lead Belly, Murray the K, Return of the Magnificent Seven, Touch of Evil, Martin Luther King, Blow Up, Red China, Red Skelton Show, John Mayo, Elvis and a drive-in movie, Elvis movie, the drive-in movie, Four Seasons, McGuinish, as in Roger McGuinn, TV Sheets by Van Morrison, uh, and Duke Ellington, Tony Bennett, Blind Willie McTell. It just goes on. I mean, that's, and I just, for someone like me, I love that. That's just that's almost like a, what do you call it? Like Easter. I've got 5,000 Easter eggs in this thing. You know,
Yeah.
that keeps me interested in it.
I think one of the reasons I'm really into the movie is because it's made by a drummer about being a drummer, and both of us are sitting like 3 feet away from the drum set that I used to play in high school bands with too. And movies very frequently, you'll notice it in the background because drums are loud. Drums are always, when they're on film, are typically not. There's a mismatch between when they hit and the sound they emit, just because it's always post dub because they're very loud and they're not accurate. And whenever a drummer makes a movie like this, that this goes into my pet theory that there's actually a lot of filmmakers who were drummers. I mean, Stanley Kubrick was a drummer. Damien Chazelle obviously is a drummer. Peyton Reed, the director of Ant-Man, I think was a drummer. I think Richard Linklater was even a drummer. And there's something about the rhythm and going into editing that I assume is a big part of this. And I'd always forgotten David Chase in that, and it makes sense. And it's also like you mentioned all the pop culture Easter eggs. Like for Sopranos fans, like his music selection was top notch. He was there are so many songs from The Sopranos that are deep cuts, that are amazing deep cuts of things you've never heard before.
And
And
what does he say in the movie here about picking music and images?
yeah, it's
Even the featurette on the Blu-ray, he
yeah.
talks about.
The actual quote is putting music together with film images.
Yes.
That's what he wanted to go to film school for. This comes there.
Even though I haven't even watched all the Sopranos, I have the soundtracks.
Oh, Ted, you
So, uh,
buy everything surround all the paraphernalia around it,
Yeah.
except the
the
actual
actual,
product itself.
but there's a great soundtrack. I mean, I bought both volumes, and I frequently play them.
So, what did you think of not being familiar with these remaining 6 seasons of Sopranos? What did you think of Gandolfini in this?
Oh well, yeah, but I'm familiar with Gandolfini, from True Romance and other things.
I
too,
know,
yeah.
but I'm saying, what did you think?
Oh
of
yeah,
him?
what's interesting is that I'm trying to think, why didn't this film get more critically acclaimed, or why didn't it get more attention? And
Okay, so it's very autobiographical, and I think people were ready for David Chase, and they were wanting something. Well, there's also the problem of the follow up, the big follow up, sophomore thing, and it wasn't genre, and genre was a big way to get into The Sopranos, and but there's also this oddness that I attribute to a late Sopranos writer and Mad Men creator Matthew Weiner, that they're both these very distinct writers who write. They're very they're great screenwriters who are very how do I want to say this, direct in what they write, but they also give you the vibe of they're like a Raymond Carver short story writer too, like. And it ends up being this kind of messiness to it, like, and it tries to evoke the messiness of life, but there's all these absurdist touches and things coming out of nowhere. And there's something about them being Chase being such an exacting writer, but still willing to go into all these different digressions, that it goes against a lot of the our past guest Glenn Kenny. I talked about this in some of his writings about how after Die Hard, there was this push on a lot of American screenwriting to work like a machine, and that every part component needs to build towards something and follow up on it, and there can be no fat or no excess. And there's very deliberate poetic digressions that still work on almost like a plot level for for these what these characters are doing. And but these digressions also can be frustrating to someone trying to verbalize what the movie is or what the movie is about. And so I think some critics really had some problems with that.
Of my age, I actually lived through this period. Uh, I was on the younger side during this period, but I remember this generation. The one of the things, one of the strong themes is that it's the generation gap in your face, and how, I mean, almost to a cliche point. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost to the things that, don't trust anybody over 30. The long hair, the fathers can't understand that. So that, depending on your mileage, it might play too strident, or it hits the right note. And I saw this with my uncle Bill, who's 5 years older than me, and my grandmother. I saw that play out in front of my eyes. This big gap that was it was happening.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. One of the things I was thinking about watching the movie is I was emailing someone the other day about being a guest on a future episode, and we were bandying back movies, a lot of late '60s music doc for spoiler alert for another few next upcoming episode. And we started talking about Woodstock and the doing the Woodstock documentary, and it got shot down. The response, this guest I was talking to said that generation went to Woodstock and then turned around and voted for Trump. And wow, you're really not agreeing with that.
Well, my uncle, who's 5 years older than me, he was knee deep. I mean, drowning in the counterculture, and Trump is Satan. As far as he's concerned, I guess probably.
Okay,
So
I mean, well, it's a generation, like
yeah.
but the age of the main character in this probably was close to my dad's age. Like they would have hit college at the exact same time. My parents both hit college, so the generational thing like works for me, but it also is a generation jump ahead. So it's like seeing, because I mean a big part of the movie is Gandolfini and his relationship with his son, and like there was that great talk where Gandolfini's like, I was wild when I was a child, or when I was a teenager too.
Well, that very same grandmother I told you about, the generation gap, at near few years before she died, she's sitting there once, and she was implying that she was pretty wild, and we can't imagine grandmother, because she's a preacher's wife, so that's always there. I think every generation, we just don't
Have a youthful wild
yeah,
oats and
I think they all, it's almost to a T.
well, so other thing was I'd forgotten Gandalf or with David Chase as a director, he actually didn't direct many episodes of Sopranos. He only directed the pilot and the finale. And before this, I rewatched the finale, which I hadn't seen. I did a good rewatch of Sopranos all the way through all 7 seasons about 2 years ago. But I rewatched the finale, and one of the fascinating things was Not Fade Away has a conversation with James Gandolfini as a father with his son about joining the army or not joining the army. And Made in America, the final episode of Sopranos, has a conversation between James Gandolfini playing a father with his son AJ about joining the army or not joining the army.
Well, did you watch the features? The actress playing the mother in Not Fade Away.
Oh yeah,
She said she's playing. She thought she was playing a younger version of.
Well, what's fascinating is rereading some of these Chase interviews. I've reminded, like, because in Sopranos, spoiler alert, the mother is a big part earlier on the show and kind of goes away, but she's defining of the early few seasons of Sopranos. And Chase wrote the nugget that got him into writing Sopranos was he wanted to write his relationship with his mom,
Right. So
and his manipulative mom. And what's in Not Fade Away, it's the same mother, but there's not that threatening menace. Like the manipulation of his mom in Sopranos is a threatening thing, and here it's so ineffectual. The Not Fade Away is more about the relationship with his dad. It feels like
right.
Yeah.
And of course, so you have the coming of age. You have the father son generation gap in the midst of the heart of the '60s. But here's the other theme that I think it speaks to maybe you and me, and is want to be creative, wanted to art, and you see how he sees things. He sees in Orson Welles films. He sees we see the breakdown of them doing Bo Diddley. It all comes together.
Well, did you hear the description in the behind the scenes of this is like all the behind the scenes drama of the Beatles and the Stones at the time
Yeah,
without the talent or the drive?
right. Well, and of course it's hilarious and I've heard this expression too, and the father says it, and then the guy who might manage them says it. It's 10% inspiration,
90%
90%
perspiration.
perspiration of anything you do, and so that's another thing. I mean, I was in grade school. I wanted to be in the band. I had some sheet music, Beatles sheet music.
Why weren't you? Why didn't you play?
Well, I never followed through on it. I had the girls lined up.
Well, okay.
And then I did comic books. I drew. I wrote, essays and stuff. So I thought I was going to become a comic book writer, and my best friend was going to be my artist.
Well, so Stevie Van Zandt brings this up in the behind the scenes that they started out playing covers. They mainly play "Time Is on Your Side" as their first the one they play live. And Stevie Van Zandt said that most bands have to start out playing covers. And it brought me back. The bands I was in high school, we did all Nirvana covers. So
right, yeah,
to generational.
Well, and of course we going back to the opening scene that I love so much. It starts out with this really interesting footage, and then a play on the emergency broadcast system, which is called now the emergency alert system, which we still run to this day.
Thank you for the TV technical knowledge of a man who still works at a TV station.
Yes, and it goes into the scene of when Mick and Keith reunited on a train,
right?
Which led to them, which would lead to the Rolling Stones, and they're talking about records and stuff. They had known each other when they were very young, but there was a gap, and then they got back together. And this scene's recreated by David Chase. It's so wonderful, and they had two guys playing Mick and Keith are really wonderful. And then the sister comes in with a voiceover, Doug's sister, which is interesting because she does the voiceover pops in and out sporadically.
I didn't realize it was the sister until the very end, and she is the person at the end of the movie, right?
Yes.
This ending blows.
Yeah, we're going to
get to the end.
Yeah, and it's not. I don't think it really spoiled anything. So feel free to keep listening when we get to it, but.
It's not really a spoiler.
Yeah. I other than the opening closing scene, here's the other scenes I love. Of course, the Keith and Mick meet. Just the joy and energy of the party where they're playing the Beatles' "Mr. Postman." This is just right after the Beatles hit on Ed Sullivan.
Oh yeah, there's something. I don't know if I'm just used to images of teenagers from the time, but there's something just about them drinking at a normal party, and it's still kind of innocent, but also not.
Yeah, the hair hasn't got long yet, and of course that's an interesting choice because it's a cover. It's an R&B cover of
right.
My other the whole time is on my side when Doug kicks in because the lead singer had to go home, and Doug has to take over lead singing, and that's a really nice sequence where he's singing "Time on My Side" at the party. And I go the one girl, the girl who at the party, she goes, "So you got to play all the popular girls. That's why the popular girls are here because this girl is just desperate for popularity."
Right.
And then, then of course, watching Touch of Evil. I am a sucker. That happens to Get Shorty, when John Travolta's watching Get. I mean,
he keeps bringing it up in Get Shorty too.
Yeah, there's something about Touch of Evil.
And then they read the Wells quote later when he's thinking about going to film school.
Right.
Well, okay. Let me ask you about the blowout. The blowout is great because they flat out say nothing happens, and the guy says, and there's no orchestra to tell you to watch out. This guy's gonna kill you. And she says, the trees are the music.
Yeah,
Bella Heathcote.
Heathcote, the actress, is really great at that.
She's so distinct looking. It's amazing that she's not really been in a lot of other stuff. They just got a Marianne Faithfull thing that they were aiming for.
Right, and of course it's the typical thing that she didn't acknowledge him in high school. When he sings, he has to take over the lead singing of "Time on My Side." That's when she notices him. See, there you go. That's why you get the rock and roll band.
That's such a dated parents' way of looking at it.
Well, if you look at
because there's in the behind the scenes, even David Chase is like making a joke. It's like that was our mistake. We didn't get laid being in a band too, and it's like girls never got attracted to you being in a band. Of course, I was the drummer.
Yeah, but David Chase's band never played a public place either. They never got out of the garage.
Really?
Yeah, they never played publicly.
Okay.
So.
Real quick drummer joke. How do you get a drummer off your front porch?
How do you get a drummer off your porch?
Pay for the pizza.
But we'll go with the blow. See, that's the beauty of this thing. You have a Touch of Evil clip, and then you have this blow up clip, and it calls attention to why blow up. What was it doing, and what it meant in the '60s, and how film was changing.
Yeah.
So I thought that's just beautiful. It's a really
But
neat.
isn't that a story that we've heard many times?
Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
I mean, I have this thing is full of things I've heard. Maybe that's the problem. It's everything's been done in this movie elsewhere and all kinds of movies, and here it is like almost a compendium of them all in one
I
film.
think it's just the fact that the baby boomers were teenagers in that era. Like this is a story and of a change that I've heard so many times. And
Yeah,
I don't know. It's that the overall stuff isn't what gets me in the movie. It's the details. It's the coming from Jersey. It's the fight for the band. I mean, there's little details like when they're practicing. The Jack Houston starts to fight with the fan, and like when you practice, it's super fucking hot.
yeah.
And just little thing, and they sweat when they play. Like these are things that don't get into like most depictions of bands on film.
There's like and just really interesting little shots where Doug is looking out the window. There's a Stone song playing, and he's looking out in the sky, and he just sits on this shot, and then the camera I think goes to his ear. And
I was going to ask you about the ear shots. There's multiple ear
yes,
shots in this movie.
yeah, I noticed that, and I think it's just the input of what goes into you that makes you who you are, and to you have to digest it. You have to sit there and listen to it.
I guess
Uh,
there's also on piggybacking off that. They're trying to be artists from the sounds they make.
yes,
And so this
yeah,
is where they
right.
get what they take in.
And he gets into the point where he says he figures out, like you said, at one point, Doug and Grace is the name, that's Bella's character name. They're in bed and she's reading this what Orson says about images and but it's like when he figures out, I love the fact of images and music together. And David Chase in one of the features talks about how he loves doing that. And then we go back to what we said before in The Sopranos,
Right.
kind of circling around here. But another thing I was going to mention, another great scene I love. There's probably several of these, and I don't catch them all. Doug, the actor playing Doug, he has a Bob Dylan hair.
It's John McGarrow,
Yeah, he
who really hasn't led a movie since then. He's
not
been in
really,
some other stuff,
but he's got this kind of a nose and hair like Dylan.
very Dylan.
And so there's this one shot where he goes to see Grace in New York City, and the camera's shooting down from the steps, and it's reproducing this great famous shot of Dylan looking up, and the color scheme and the jacket and everything is reproducing this one famous Dylan shot.
That's cool. I didn't pick up on.
And so I'm thinking there's probably some more like that in this movie. And when I rattled off all of those pop culture references, that's not even listing the songs,
Sure.
because the songs are all kinds of songs of different people too. So
Well, let's get to one thing I wanted to talk about is why David Chase hasn't made a second movie yet. I mean, you're not too familiar. You haven't really read up a lot on him being not a like.
well, how old is he now?
He's getting old. Well, okay. So the next thing that the film he's working on is the Many Saints of Newark, which is the Sopranos prequel that just got announced. It's gotten pushed back to fall, and he's not directing. He
Yeah.
only co-wrote that.
Right.
And you'd think that if he wanted to get in the director's chair again, that writing getting back to Sopranos, which Sopranos ends in a very distinct way, which I mean I think you've been spoiled on, but I'm not going to spoil it.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
But and so he said I'm not making anything after that point, but this is a prequel. Although I'm also weirded out just because it's supposed to take place during the '67 riots in Newark, and I thought they in the first season of Sopranos they actually dealt with that, or they had a flashback to that, and so I'm curious how they overlappers. But anyway, Chase is not directing this. And in some of the behind the scenes, Chase is saying he didn't necessarily have a great time directing. He only directed the 2 Sopranos episode. I think he's directed some other TV beyond this, but from his old stuff. But this movie makes it clear like that he wanted to be an auteur, and he really had some distinct ideas about film that he wanted to and technique that he wanted to work. And Sopranos, pilots typically the way they're filmed, the visual look of it is what's going to inform how the rest of the show works. So he defined that, and I was reading this interview where Sopranos being one of the first peak TV shows, his whole idea was that he wanted to open it up and not feel like TV, and that distinctly is one of those things that made the show more cinematic than a lot of TV was at the time. So he did define the look of the show, and his fingerprints are obviously it is his show. He's the auteur of the show, but it's that thing of like Lucas went on in Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi, where he wanted to be an auteur but not go to set on day to day. It felt like.
Yeah, that's
or someone who wanted to write, because he wasn't even necessarily that big. Like, he got into writing from wanting to make films, but he wasn't necessarily a writer who read, and he came to it, and being such a distinct and accomplished writer and a very nuanced and subtle writer, it's amazing how that came about. But why do you think he hasn't directed another movie?
I don't know. You're much more up on Chase. It seemed like he was just was the most of the TV work was that writing, right? He's basically a
Yeah, almost
writer.
all of it.
So I don't know. Maybe the failure of
But
this.
this movie's about his passion to
Yeah,
make
maybe the
films.
failure of this film took the wind out of him.
Was this? Do you think this movie was a failure? For, I mean, like,
I don't know. There's a Paramount Vantage. Yeah, that
yeah.
was Paramount's arts film, which subsidiary, which doesn't exist
Well,
anymore.
there's that feeling that the sophomore thing, or the follow up to a big hit, a lot of filmmakers will want to cash in their chips and make a passion project. And the other, so I avoided earlier in the episode when I was talking about what movies I didn't watch or what features I watched this week, because only interesting feature I watched this week leading up to this was Matthew Weiner's film Are You Here, which was his follow up to Mad Men. It had Owen Wilson, Amy Poehler, and Zach Galifianakis in it. Do you remember this movie?
Are you? I think.
Because this is the polar opposite.
What's really weird is I might have like picked it up for $1 in a
It sounds like
bargain
a
bin,
It's a dollar in bargain bin. Because, okay, Chase,
which I haven't watched yet.
well, you're not alone. This is the first time I'd watch it, because this is the polar opposite of not Fade Away, where this is an underrated movie no one's seen, and it's actually a very, people should watch this. Are You Here is not. It is bizarrely bad, or it's not bad, but to come from Mad Men. And I should be clear, the reason I'm bringing up Matthew Weiner here is, he wrote in the last 2 seasons of Sopranos before moving on and creating Mad Men, and he directed a lot of Mad Men episodes. He was different in Chase in that regard. But Mad Men, in subject, was a mature TV show and definitely one of the highlights of peak TV. But from a directing standpoint, almost the entirety of Mad Men takes place indoors. It's all like very medium shots of people talking back and forth. Like, there's not a, and like there's these poetic asides, where like usually it's like a POV of somebody observing something that added a lot of the poetry to the show. But this movie doesn't, or Are You Here doesn't really have, except for like 2 moments, any of that, and it's done in a very obvious, like the score is so obvious.
And so you would come out and say this is a bad movie. I mean, it's not constructed well.
Well, this is the movie that I think a lot of people think Not Fade Away is, just because, like,
But what is Not Fade Away to you?
it's a great movie. And even more so,
Even with the cliches and the tropes that we've seen 40,000 or we've heard 40,000
I
times
think
over.
Chase, I think what I didn't. I think Chase finds interesting details and ways into it. I mean, because I watched Sopranos twice. I watched Mad Men multiple times, and one of the things it really hit me on the second Sopranos rewatch was the first rewatch. The genre stuff was like, you want to know what's going to happen. Is Tony going to die? Who's going to die? Who's going to get killed? And all the like tension of that. Second time, I don't know how I missed how fucking funny the show is. And because a lot of the comedy in the show is about like people being pretentious and them getting their comeuppance somehow. And Mad Men was the same way too. The tone of Mad Men came across so much better the second time. This movie, Not Fade Away, definitely. The second time I got it even more, and I liked the movie a lot the first time. Are You Here is a movie that is just, it felt like an old script of Matthew Weiner's that he cashed his chips and wanted to get made. David Chase on Not Fade Away didn't feel like that. It's a script he probably wrote after Sopranos.
I'm just so amazed that these films that you, me, other people we know, we love, we treasure, we cherish, and think they're really good, but they just don't find any traction.
Well, that's why we're doing a podcast episode about
Well,
it.
true.
I mean,
No, true, but it's just so funny because
this is a movie both you and I will stand behind.
But it makes me think, am I not seeing this right? Sometimes it makes me double think it, like.
See, I'm the exact opposite. I feel proud to like do an episode on this, just because like, and if someone, because every once in a while, sometimes people, whenever you say you like a movie and they give you the snobby, you like that movie, and they probably haven't really seen that movie either.
No, usually when I finally get them to watch it, they go, "Wow, that was good."
Right.
But it did one time just recently, not too long ago. I was curating a series for the Victory Film Festival, and I did Local Hero,
Mm-hmm.
and the reaction wasn't that great. I'm like, oh, and I thought, oh, everybody's gonna love this one, and I'm like, so it's not always, not always the case, that it's gonna like,
Sure. I mean, you take a while to revisit a movie. You're
yeah.
not gonna remember
I mean, I still
how it
love Local Hero.
ages.
I think Local Hero is, I could watch that all the time. But apparently,
You felt as strongly on Local Hero.
yes.
See, I've only seen Local Hero once, and it didn't.
Maybe we should do a podcast on that.
It wasn't.
Let's see what you think.
I didn't feel like it was worth writing home about, but I know a lot of people love it. Though
Yeah.
it's like a big Game of Thrones favorite. So, do we want to go ahead and get to? Both of us are really excited about talking about the ending. It
Yeah.
sounds like. So, let's start off with the last Gandolfini scene.
Okay.
It is. Oh man, it is something. Well, okay. I brought up the father of the Sopranos for that. Gandolfini is doing a lot of. He's amazing in it, but he does feel like he's doing. There's a lot of Tony Soprano overlaps in there, just mostly in his mannerisms and the fact that Chase is writing an intimidating father who's constantly disapproving of his son.
Yeah,
But-
it almost, that's the scary part of this.
But there's no violence or intimidation in it.
But it almost, push it just a few more inches, and it could be caricature of the generation gap thing.
Right.
It's really playing close to the bone there.
One of the autobiographical notes he said was, "You look like you just came off the boat," and apparently that was something David Chase's dad said to him
Right.
a lot. Too.
But it is true. I mean, I like I said, I experienced, I witnessed some of this gap that was there. It's not it's a cliche for a reason.
Ted, my parents didn't approve of certain things from my generation, right?
Oh yeah, no, I know, but I'm talking, but I'm talking about the '60s. It was so.
Sure.
It's that one has become the totem of all the generation gaps, and in some ways, more so, don't you think? I mean, in terms of in myth and legend.
Actually, I'm starting to think. I don't know if it's just because we're dealing with it, but Gen Z to their.
Well, now the kids on video games and that
the hipping and the hopping and the bipping
nobody's
and the bopping.
reading anymore, and
Yeah.
blah blah blah.
No, it's
because of the generation gap. The kids were reading, of reading all kinds of stuff. That the parents.
I
no
think
longer
generation gap issues are always equidistant. It's always going to be. People are always going to be dealing with the generation gap. And
right, but I mean, just the '60s one seems to be the one that seems to loom over all of them.
So Gandolfini's final scenes. There's we talked about the mother resembling Olivia from Sopranos, but also David Chase's mother, and there's this beautiful moment where the arc of. There's a great dinner scene which we alluded to earlier where they start to understand each other, the father and son, and there's a moment, but the mother doesn't have that openness in the arc. The mother says a crack about the girl that Doug is going away with, and there's a look on Gandolfini's face, and what he then does after that, which I won't spoil. It's just beautifully played. Like, I mean, I don't want to shit on the similarities between Gandolfini's performances between this and Tony Soprano, but there's a
and then the camera shot of him, the pulling away, and he's standing there on the
and
street.
the look on his face.
Yeah.
The Chase has talked a lot about this from Sopranos of Gandolfini is a big guy with big eyes who gives you a sweetness weirdly that gets completely taken away in the Sopranos, but here it comes across, and it's just I don't know, it's just a beautiful. The thing about this movie that as much as I love Sopranos, David Chase was constantly fighting the audience's love of the characters he wanted to point out that these people were committing evil acts or these were gangsters and they were people who were doing morally reprehensible things. This more so than Weiner had trouble with this in Mad Men and definitely Are You Here. This shows a lot of humanity, more humanity than almost was shown in any of Sopranos. There's little hits. The Adriana character in Sopranos kind of had it, but there's a feeling that Chase, because of the intensive autobiography in here, he loves the characters more than he loved any of the characters in Sopranos. I mean, he thought Sopranos characters were fun, but then they did funny things. But he's not judging these characters, and it's really touching. And
Yeah, we didn't even mention that there's a couple takes place around a lot of holidays. This film,
Right.
and you get to sit in on a couple of family dinners, which is always, and everybody can relate to family dinners in the holidays.
That's a good point.
And that's
well, Chase has talked about that a lot of dinners is a big thing for Italian families, and so I mean, almost every season of Sopranos ends with a family dinner.
Yeah,
and well, okay, the other movie I want to talk about that he's watching. He has Chase also steals from his dad that his dad apparently liked to watch movies while eating ice cream, and so Gandolfini's constantly doing that. And the scene after he goes away to California, Doug goes away to California. What is the movie he's watching? Is it South Pacific?
Oh, Bali High, yeah, it's from Bali High. The song Bali High in South Pacific about this wonderful place, Bali High. I mean, it's very. It stuck out. That song stuck out as a kid to me when I saw it on TV in South Pacific.
There's a coolness of the messed up color TV with the messing up the Technicolor. But how did you feel about this scene, this watch?
Oh well, it's almost on the nose because she's thinking about this wonderful place to be at, and where all your cares go away. And that's where, this is where Doug and Grace are going out to Hollywood.
Yeah,
and so they're going to a new place, a new world.
It wasn't much to you this time. It was too on the nose, you thought?
Well, no, I mean, not so much on the nose, but I think it just we have all this. I think every person has that dream, has that wanting that the place to go.
It was really touching to me. This guy.
Yes,
it was very well, because he had mentioned like in the dinner scene that we alluded to earlier that he couldn't go to World War II, and so South Pacific being about World War II. And there's a shot of ocean to ocean, and where it shows the ocean in South Pacific, and then it cuts to Doug going to seeing the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, because Doug and Grace are going to Hollywood. They dropped out of college, or he dropped out of college.
He dropped out of college early in the movie.
Yeah, and they're going.
And he may be going back to college.
Yeah, and they're going to go out to try their hand in L.A. And then we also should mention 2 or 3 times, not just once. There's something about Rod Serling and Twilight Zone, but more so Rod Serling.
No, I mentioned it earlier.
Well, I know,
that's what I was talking about with the influence. Like his influences are all over this.
Right, but even to the point where what's the question when he gets to the party? What was one of the questions he asked?
Where does Rod Serling?
Where does Rod Serling? And what does David Chase become? A TV writer. I wonder if Rod is one of his major guys.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying. Of course, it's very much. I mean, like I read an interview. He talks kind of not highly about Night Stalker, his work on Night Stalker, but but he TV was a clear influence to him. For someone that had such these like big '60s French New Wave or American New Wave hopes, he got into TV, and in some ways, he said he took the money, but. Like, he clearly had these aspirations, but TV was in his DNA.
Well, Michael Mann kind of went that route in many ways.
I mentioned Michael Mann earlier with Vegas. They I think they're close over. But the thing is, Chase didn't stick with the film, or didn't stick with features at the very least, or directing even.
So now we're out. So the film ends with the 2 couple out in L.A.
Right, and so there's you wanted to talk about the car at the end. There's that vibe with there's a character.
Well,
the character he runs into is wearing clown crying makeup, and it's this bizarre to me.
Well, let's back up a little bit. He's at a party,
okay,
and he loses Grace. He doesn't know where she's at, so now he's just wandering the streets of L.A. and it's vacant. And at night, this is like 1968 Los Angeles. He's downtown L.A.
It's not downtown L.A. It's Hollywood.
Well, okay.
Well, because he walks by Wallach's Music City.
Well,
what's fascinating to me is you saw the thing about Amoeba Records closing earlier
right.
this year. It's like from where I looked it up, is that Wallach's is at. It's like 2 blocks away from where Amoeba is at.
But he's walking in. Hollywood is LA too, right?
Sure. I'm sorry.
He's walking and the streets are vacant, and he's just kind of rambling. Oh, that's another thing. What do we see in Don't Look Back, the Pennebaker film on Dylan? There's a scene where Dylan is eyeing electric guitars through a window.
Because it's a recurring thing, him looking through the window.
And
it bookends the movie.
Yeah, he looks at the guitars
when he looks at Wallach's.
Yeah, and then this car pulls up, and there's this couple in there, and like I said, she's got a clown.
She's got clown crying makeup, and I remember thinking distinctly of this weird mix between a Manson girl and Pris from Blade Runner.
It's just really strange, and she wants, we need a ride, and he thinks about it and says no, and he starts to walk.
No, he doesn't say anything. He backs off.
He
doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
He just backs off.
And he just walks off, and then that's when I think that's it for him, because.
Well, the other notable thing I wanted to point out, there's all those RFK posters in the background.
Yeah, RFK. We had JFK, but now we got RFK.
This probably takes place before. Well, this is is it 68 when the movie ends?
I'm terrible at dates. So,
okay. Because RFK.
I was wondering that myself when I was watching. When did he get assassinated?
I think it's like July 68 or June 68.
Yeah. So I knew that was some. I mean, it obviously was significant, but I don't know if at the timing of it.
Okay. So
go ahead.
I was going to wind down and talk about what I think is clearly our favorite part of the movie. It's just such a magical ending. Like I think when I first saw the movie, I was a little into the movie, but this ending was what made it stratospheric.
But the ending will it's going to throw a lot of people. It's going to stop you in your tracks because it jumps the reality line.
What's a little magic realism?
Yeah,
but it's not even that. It's just the narrator.
Well, the narrator is the sister who has been narrating a little bits and pieces in the movie at the beginning and once or twice in the movie. That's it, not much. She comes in and she's addressing the camera.
Yeah, in a very mod outfit. She looks older than she's looked the entire movie, to the point where I just had to ask you, is that the sister? Because she's been growing through this.
Yeah, you see her grow up and you see her change.
But she's definitely distinctly grown up by this point.
Yes.
And she gives the most chilling, amazing line. America's produced two things: nuclear energy and rock and roll. Which one will survive in the end? That's not the exact quote.
Enormous power. Two inventions of enormous power.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, and it leaves you with that. And you're like, okay.
And then the song comes up to match with the earlier song. It's the Sex Pistols doing the Jonathan Richman cover of Roadrunner.
Yeah, and the Sex Pistols, the girl talking to you into the camera, bringing the two things in your mind, and then she starts to dance to it across the street. The dance
is so hypnotic. It's so amazing.
Oh, and then here's the thing. This is just almost too personal for me. I can't say this makes the film any better or not. So I'm sitting there, and this whole ending comes up, and I'm like, what? And I'm just like trying to figure it all out. And then the credits start rolling, and then for me personally, it plays my favorite Beatles song.
What's your favorite Beatles
song? I Got a Feeling.
Oh, okay.
And
That's your favorite Beatles song?
Yes, it is.
Why?
And then when because for one reason you got the perfect John part, you got the perfect Paul part, and then they do it together at the same time. So it's a great example of Paul, the difference and the combination of John and Paul.
I like interesting logic on people's favorite Beatles songs. I have a fondness for everybody's got something to hide except for me, my monkey. So what can I say?
And then that ends, and then we got Bob Dylan, and we got this prime Bob Dylan song, which I've always found fascinating. She Belongs to Me. And then Bob Dylan, of course,
there's three songs in the credits altogether.
The entire I Got a Feeling, and then they don't finish the Bob Dylan song before the credits run out, but it fades out. But yeah, and it's just I just love. I mean, so I'm on this high. My favorite Beatles song, Bob Dylan, and that whole ending. I'm just like, what have I just watched? It's one of those films that come out of the theater going, I gotta talk to somebody about this. I need somebody here to share this experience with,
No. Well, I think the power of the book ending and how it comes up, and like the reusage of the twist dance from the beginning, the old TV footage, but it's the cut to it because it matches with the music, and it cuts on a certain point where I think the Roadrunner chorus comes in and.
Yeah, the black and white.
Beautiful. It's so energetic.
Yeah, and like you said, the black and white footage we saw at the beginning shows up again at the end. And it's a mixed band. It's white and black in the band doing a very popular dance movement.
There's a lot of great things at the ending I noticed this time that I didn't first viewing, like the S3 or whatever it was they see in the clouds. He sees that.
Yes, right. Yes. Yeah, earlier on, the three main band members, the consistent band members, the other members come and go, but they look up in the sky and they see this cloud formation. They go, what is that? They're trying to figure it out, and they think it stands for their success.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see the Doug sees it again at the end in the L.A. up in the sky again.
We didn't even really talk about the band arc and
Yeah,
beyond because I guess is it like really that interesting? Is it? I mean,
well, it's you see it.
It's nice to watch a band that doesn't make it.
Like the Tom Hanks film, the thing that you do. Everybody loves that film. That gets much more traction and attention than this one did.
Well, the other movie I thought of a lot during this is a movie I think you like. I know I love is the Russian movie We Are the Best.
I don't think I've seen it.
You've never seen that?
I don't think so.
Oh, it's this amazing movie about these Russian 13-year-old girls. I want to say 12 or 13-year-old girls starting their own band, and they play terrible punk music, but it's so energetic and so enthusiastic. But it's about the glorious amateurness of punk rock, and this. Yeah.
Well, Diane Lane's in One Fabulous Stains. I've
been waiting to see that. I haven't.
Yeah, there's all these coming of age.
Is Fabulous Stains about the amateurism though? Because one of the things I love and there's the music in this, they're good. They're genuinely good. The singing, Jack Houston supposedly had to sing off just because he was too good of a singer in real life. But We Are the Best. They're not good, and that's part of the joy of it. They're just learning.
So yeah, but getting back to the not fade away. So as I was driving over here to record the podcast, just bouncing things around in my head about this movie is I'm thinking maybe is it possible that maybe it didn't work as well with the critics, or it's maybe not considered that great a film because she says the two most powerful inventions in the world. Well, we spent the whole film really with rock and roll. We really didn't spend that much time about the atomic bomb threat, other than that one time we see on New Year's Eve the sisters watching the
there's the test footage,
footage of this is what you do if a bomb goes off, you duck and under your couch and blah blah blah. Maybe there needed to be some more things about that interwoved into the film.
I don't agree with that.
Well, I'm just saying.
No, because
I'm just saying why. I'm just wondering why does this...
I think on a basic level the critics got this wrong. I don't think the movie got anything wrong, and I don't think the movie was lacking anything of. The movie definitely wasn't lacking in period detail or what.
It's all there. It's just it's like I said. I have no problems with it. It's wonderful, but I'm trying to be objective about it and just trying to think why it's so overlooked and so underrated and disappeared and considering it's David Chase and Sopranos, you would think there would have been much more.
I think it just comes down to it's not genre, and it's the same problem that we're gonna not to also tip our hand of another future episode when we talk about The Wire. David Simon had to deal with this on when he followed The Wire, which was a genre show or had genre in it, and then he did Treme, which has pretty much no genre, is a show about New Orleans food and music, and everyone just. It was a really hard follow up.
And again, this. How much does marketing play in films? Getting the word out. I think, and I was looking at the Wikipedia page. I think now Paramount Vantage released it, which already is not a pure Paramount film. It's their art subsidiary,
right?
And I think Weinstein was involved too.
Probably.
I'm wondering that how that plays into, because I'm thinking how many films that Weinstein sits on or messes with, or they don't put their money behind or whatever. It's just so criminally overlooked.
This is another reason I wanted to do this episode is I rail against it. It's the critical group think at the time, and just no one defended this movie.
Well, remember one of our guests, Jonathan Rosenbaum. He came out with a book with his own top 100 list, an answer to the typical canon list.
It was against the AFI list.
Yeah, against the. And I think, of course, I think we're of a different breed or such a cinephiles. But I've come up with a list of these films I think are really great and wonderful that don't get hardly any attention, and it's like we all come up with our own canons. It seems like
we will be talking about every single one of those on this.
So
I did one follow up with the Matthew Weiner thing. I did want to lastly mention is I've only watched a few episodes of the Romanoffs, his follow up, because Chase hasn't done another TV show after this. But Weiner's doing that show on Amazon, which is following that Amazon format where big filmmakers or showrunners are going and making basically anthology feature films, but under a rubric of one season. And so he's done a few kind of movies on the Romanovs, which it's linked together. It's all descendants of the Romanovs from Russia.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, those the ones I've seen have been pretty solid. So
That's my period with Trotsky. So running around there
yeah,
doing that.
yeah, I thought that's another reason you might be into it. But and he wrote this novella, Heather the Totality, which I read is pretty solid too. So like they can come back and make good stuff or stuff that's popular even I think
Yeah,
or popular-ish. I don't know if any of the Weiner stuff's caught on, and I think people are genuinely excited about Many Saints of Newark coming out.
but anybody. Let me just stress out there, if anybody whoever's listening, that if you're in the '60s in that time period and interested in it and love that music and love that time, you need to see this film. You need to really embrace it and watch it. And again, I still can't get over how much I love the opening and the closing of this film. I just to me it puts. Like I said, we didn't really go into that, but how much between that the almost doesn't live up to the opening and the ending. Even though I love I love it all.
I
But
don't. I hear a little more what you're saying. I don't think you should fault a movie for having such. What's the Tarantino point about Raiders that it never comes back from the opening?
yeah,
I mean, this movie just has some great, amazing opening and close bookend
yes.
to it. And I wanted to say to anyone out there listening who has no interest in more '60s paraphernalia, this movie still works, even if you're
There
kind
you
of.
go. There you go. It's about trying to find your voice, trying to be creative, trying to find your way of what you want to do. And who hasn't done that? I mean, who hasn't gone through that?
Did you have anything else to have? Is that it?
No, I just see the movie. Please watch the movie.
Every one of our episodes, when we do these appreciations, we're like, please see the movie. Please watch the movie. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Hope you have a good day. I don't know. Should I have a better Walter Cronkite sign off?
I just not fade away.
Not fade away. Well played, Ted. Well played.